And so if he goes to jail, where does he go to jail? Rikers Island? Probably Rikers Island. What's going to happen with Trump? Will he go to prison? I honestly can say I don't know. And just like the Hunter Biden verdict, this should have been settled. Honestly, both of those cases should have been settled.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. A little bit late in reacting to Trump's verdict, but we're going to react to the verdict on Trump anyway, just because there's some nagging questions about the supremacy clause and whether he'll actually go to jail or just what's going to happen to Trump from here on out. And then we'll kind of analyze just kind of the landscape that he's facing. I don't know how he does it, but it would cause just about any one of us to go buckle under stress. But we are here today with our content genius, Michael Rivers, behind the camera, behind the ideas, behind everything, and behind the man who holds me up, actually. So we are reacting to Trump, but before we get to Trump, this is brought to you by eSign.com. That's one of our sponsors, and I know I talk a lot about my grandma and her being in the basement with her feet and all her different endeavors, but really, honestly, they've been a solid sponsor of CLR, and want you to know that they're a great place if you have a legal form need. And all legal issues arise out of situations, right? And if you're prepared, you can avoid the courtroom and avoid a high cost of a lawyer. So go to eforms.com. If you're selling a car, get a bill of sale. If you have somebody that needs assistance in their life, get a power of attorney. If you have a business, deal with somebody, do a business agreement. If you are renting a property, get a rental agreement. Everything should be in writing. Guess why? Because if it's in writing, there's no mistaking as to what the agreement is, right? And if somebody tries to screw you over, you've got a document that says, look, here's what it is, and documents generally don't lie. They didn't lie in Trump's case, let me tell you. eForms.com, a very excellent way to avoid the courtroom and avoid the high costs of lawyers like me. Okay, let's talk about the verdict. The jury in this case did not take a long time to render their decision. And, they had some people that were not necessarily for Trump, but not necessarily against Trump. But, and just like the Hunter Biden verdict, this should have been settled, honestly. Both of those cases should have been settled. In the Hunter Biden case, there was so much evidence that he was a drug addict and he was addicted to drugs and was reckless, and he, wrote on the form no, right? So there was just an overwhelming amount. But the Supreme Court in that case could render a decision that would be favorable to him because the tenor of the court right now is very pro-Second Amendment. Something like that possibly could happen with Trump. So now Trump's been convicted of all counts. Every election challenge they tried, they lost. The E. Jean Carroll case, they lost that miserably. Twice. And now he owes over $80 million. That's a staggering figure. He tried the New York fraud case, lost. He tried the Trump Organization fraud case, lost. He doesn't win. He's not a winner. He's not winning, and he didn't win this case. And in this case, he had better lawyers in this case than he had in any other case. His lawyers were top notch. But the evidence was overwhelming. I mean, honestly, when you think about it, what the fuck was he doing? He was paying off a porn star, whether or not you believe he did anything to her, at any point. Who cares? That's certainly not the issue. The issue is whether he paid her off and whether that was to cover something up in violation of other laws, tax law and the federal election laws. What happens now? So once somebody's convicted of a crime, they go meet with the probation officer. And what is the probation officer? The probation officer is an arm of the court. So the probation officer, and it's he had to meet with probation, and they did it by Zoom, and that's not getting special treatment. That's pretty common. I do that with in the federal system all the time. In fact, I just did it 2 weeks ago. And what you do with federal with this is a state case, but what you do with probation is you give them your personal history, your drug history, your your family, your finances, just a whole your criminal history, your employment history. You give them a whole big picture of who you are as a person, and that goes. Then they develop a report, and then that goes to the judge. Okay, and it's pretty simple and straightforward. Usually, probably anywhere from 20 to 50 pages, depending upon how complex the case is. Now, one of the things that they look at is acceptance of responsibility, attitude in court, and a whole bunch of other things. Well, there's no acceptance of responsibility here because he tried the case and he lost. But his attitude and remorse, he doesn't have any remorse because he doesn't think he did anything wrong. So that's going to weigh against him. So how does that all weigh into the judge's decision? Because really, at the end of the day, what is the judge deciding? There's two things. Conditions of probation, because he'll be on probation for a certain period of time, right? And then the other thing is whether he does any jail time or prison time. Now, Michael Cohen went to prison for 36 months. He got a 36-month sentence for this same conduct, for lying to the FBI, for covering things up for Trump. That's what he did. And so Alan Weisselberg went to prison twice for lying in a fraud case and for perjury. Who is he protecting? Trump. Everybody in Trump's orbit seems to go to prison. And I know you're saying some people say, oh, it's rigged, it's a witch hunt, it's the Democrats. It may be political, but you don't go to fucking prison and you don't lose your case if they don't have the facts. So whether it's political or not, who fucking cares? You think Hunter Biden would be prosecuted for that case but for his name? Probably not. Do you think Trump would be prosecuted for this but for who he is? Probably not. But it doesn't fucking matter. If they don't have the facts, they don't have the facts. And in both cases, they had the facts. The prosecution had the facts in both cases. Now, the old adage, is Biden in control. Biden's not in control of anything. This is a state prosecution. Okay, that being said, what's going to happen with Trump? Will he go to prison? I honestly can say I don't know. It's going to be a tough decision for this judge to put a former president in prison. It just will be. But you can't ignore the fact that he's got 34 fucking felony counts. That puts you off the grid in terms of a sentence. A lot of times they have sentencing guidelines, and I'll have to confess I don't know a lot about New York sentencing guidelines. But, they talked about him looking at a maximum of 25 years. First of all, he's not going to get 25 years. If he got any time at all, I would say it'd be between 6 and 12 months. That would be my guess. I just can't see him. I mean, this is a crime, but it's sort of a victimless crime, really, when you think about it. Because, who's hurt by this? Nobody, right? Stormy Daniels got laid. She got paid. Karen McDougal got laid. She got paid. And the doorman, he didn't get laid, but he got paid. And all covering up shit they didn't want to come out. And the timing of it really did matter. So there's also talk, and I read an article yesterday about Samuel Alito had opined in a case a while back about whether or not the supremacy clause would prohibit, if Trump is elected, of the supremacy clause would prohibit him from doing any time. I don't know that that's true. In fact, there's no case law to suggest it's either true or not true. But, and we know that the issue of immunity is up before the Supremes right now, right? So, and there's no way they're going to say that a president is absolutely immune from any kind of prosecution anywhere. That's just not going to happen. And in fact, in 2020, when Trump was fighting Congress trying to get his records, saying that he was immune from the subpoena, the Supreme Court, thanks to John Roberts, who's probably the most sage voice on the Supreme Court, said that a president, what is it? He said a properly tailored criminal subpoena would not normally hamper the performance of the president's constitutional duties. That's what he said. And so they said that you can get those records. So my point is that, he can't pardon himself from a state prosecution. A president cannot pardon Trump from a state prosecution. A governor can. A governor can grant clemency, but they're separate sovereigns. So by that I mean, you got one body of government and another body of government, that being the state and the feds. So, but what impact would 34 felony convictions have on the other counts that he's facing in other jurisdictions? It puts him off the fucking grid for the federal sentencing guidelines. Guidelines go up to like 12 points. .34 is on the edge of that. But and when you get down to Georgia, so and then all of a sudden they count all these things as prior criminal history points. You're going to have to make an argument, or Trump is going to have to make an argument if he's convicted of anything else, that his criminal history is overstated. Because really, the 34 counts, but it's really one case, and it's really three separate incidents. You got three separate non-disclosures essentially. On three. You got Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal, and then the doorman. Those are the three things. So 34 counts represents every document, that was a false business record to cover up some other crime, because that's what he was convicted of. But it really does overstate his criminal history, because prior to that, he's got nothing. So, and look at this judge. Judge Marchand, he was very reluctant to put Trump in jail for contempt. They had the gag order, and and the gag order is common, especially in really high-profile cases. And Trump flouted, his nose at the court. He criticized the court. And you can't have what they call invited error doctrine. And what invited error doctrine means, okay, I made the judge hate me so much that he couldn't be impartial. Well, you can't do that, and that's essentially, I think, what Trump was really trying to do. Hang on, sorry. And that's really essentially what Trump was trying to do. He was trying to get the judge to hate him so much that he would have to recuse himself. But he didn't. And the judge was pretty measured, if you ask me. So he's got a big decision to make. Does he throw Trump in prison or does he not? And, you look to other cases similar to what Trump has been convicted of. And I don't think that people get a lot of prison time for this at all. Even though it's 34 counts, he's not going to be sentenced as other 34 counts. He's going to be sentenced as probably one incident, and my guess is 6 to 12 months. But, this is going to have an impact, a rolling effect on everything else. And so if he goes to jail, where does he go to jail? Rikers Island? Probably Rikers Island. But how does he go there? And where the fuck does the Secret Service, do they have to go to jail too? It's just it's a lot of unknowns. I do know that the Secret Service was attempting to make arrangements and coordinate with the court if Trump was going to be taken into custody for contempt. I do know they were coordinating, so I'm sure they're in talks with prison officials if Trump gets sentenced to jail, where he would do his time, how he would do his time, what the role of Secret Service would be at that point. And it's a shit show, honestly. And it's all because of Trump's hubris, honestly. I just don't understand how he doesn't have an ounce of humility. He doesn't have an ounce of fear that, well, maybe he probably does have fear. you hear from behind the scenes that he's scared shitless to go to jail, and anybody would be, but he sure doesn't show it, does he? Not on the Trump stuff, not anywhere else. So, the sentencing will go like this. They'll have the pre-sentence investigation, and I'm sure both parties will submit a written position paper about what they think the appropriate sentence would be. And there's various things that the court takes into consideration. Age, lack of criminal history, once removed from the actual acts of disclosure, and the things that are done to cover this stuff up. But it also look at aggravating factors like his attitude in court, his attitude out of court, his respect for the law, his prolific nature of statements he made about the court's family, just all the different his lack of remorse, his lack of accountability. So you take all that stuff and you weigh it, and then the judge fashions some kind of balancing test. What is in the public interest? What is the best thing for the defendant? And what is the best thing? And how are they perceived among other cases similar to Trump's? So, in a sentence, like this is not unprecedented. We just recently learned of a guy who in New York had a check cashing scheme, falsifying business records, and he got 3 years. Conditional discharge after he pled guilty. So it's not unheard of that these things are prosecuted. So it's not like, and honestly, had Trump just remained a private citizen and kept operating his bankrupt businesses, none of this would be an issue. He probably could have kept doing it. Remember, he did his charity, and his family can't do charities anymore in New York because they use it as a personal piggy bank. Anyway, and I don't want this to be a Trump bashing session, but it is interesting because it's such uncharted territory. We've never had a former president go to prison before, and it's not hard to stay out of prison. Just so you know, it's not fucking hard. I'm 57 years old, and I have had no problem staying out of prison. My son Michael behind the camera, he's 27. Fuck, I should know that. He hasn't had any trouble staying out of jail or prison. So, I'm just saying, we can go down that road or we can not go down that road. And the thing that kills me is the lack of humility with Trump, and the lack of insight as to what he's facing. I wouldn't make half these fucking public statements, but he's got to be in the news every fucking day. Every day he's got to be in the news. It's like an addiction with him. And, but as a criminal defense lawyer, you don't want your client saying a goddamn thing. You don't, he's a nightmare as a client. When they put Costello on the stand, the only reason they did that is because Trump wanted him on the stand. He did not help his cause one bit. And you don't do what Trump says, you get fired. And so it's very difficult to do your job around somebody like Trump. And so we'll follow it. Keep watching. And there's a lot of other really cool stuff in the news. We'll probably have some more Thug update because there's a lot of shit going on with that. We'll probably do a video over the weekend, like a Thug wrapped up, because that is just absolutely a legal shit show, and I just can't even get over what this judge, who's out of fucking control, is doing in that case. And he's really digging himself a hole. So we see you next time on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, our content genius, and make sure you follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, wherever we are. Follow us. Sign up for Patreon, and we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. 23-hour lockdown, please, is that my God.